Okay, we are good to go. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So this may look a little bit familiar for those of you who shared your experiences and for those of you who shared your job search strategies. So this is what most job seekers do. This is the approach that most people take to their job search. And I call this the reactive approach because if you know kind of the difference between being reactive and proactive, it's kind of like something happens and then you react to it. So you act upon a stimulus of some sort. Being proactive is more so putting things in place so that when opportunities do arise, you're ready for it. So this is the reactive approach. This is what I see most people in general, not just Udacity students, but they find a job opening, whether it's on LinkedIn or Indeed or Glassdoor or ZipRecruiter or AngelList or any of these job boards that people are using to find those jobs. One thing I want to mention is that these job boards are not necessarily places where jobs are automatically uploaded to. These companies have to pay these companies in order to advertise. So they're not just necessarily job boards, they're more so advertising platforms. So if a company doesn't want to pay for that advertising, then that job may not be posted. So we'll talk about some strategies for finding those roles that may not be posted. But this is the strategy that most people take, and it's not very effective. It has been in the past, and you will still have some success. So if you're finding jobs online and applying, you still may hear back from some of them. But for the most part, I hear this, and I've experienced it personally, that this just does not work too well. And part of that is due to how a lot of companies are going about finding the top talent and the candidates for these roles, which we'll cover that as well, so that you have an understanding of what to do, but also so that you have an understanding of what these employers are looking for. Because from my experience, it's helpful to put yourself in the mindset of somebody who's hiring so that you know why they make the decisions that they make. So if you're applying for 100 jobs and you're getting generic responses from every one of those, hopefully I can help you understand what's going on there. Let's go ahead and move forward. If you are taking this strategy, we're going to work on fixing that. It's no shame to anybody who is. I did it for a very long time and I did not experience much success from it. And so this was a learning opportunity for me as well before I really started to learn how to go about this and understand the hiring process and figure out how to be more proactive about my own job search and my career as a whole. So let's talk about why applying online is ineffective. So this is like, using like your Indeeds, your LinkedIn, Glassdoor, these different job boards, and even sometimes the individual company's website can be a little bit ineffective when you're just submitting a resume and applying online. So this statistic, it tends to change depending on the organization that's doing the research, but what I found kind of, a comprehensive of all of those different things, I found that between 70 to 85% of jobs are not even posted online. So when you're thinking about, applying for jobs online, it may shift your perspective a little bit to find out that the majority of jobs that people are getting and the majority of jobs that employers are looking to fill are not posted on those websites. One of those reasons is because they have to pay for it and it can be very expensive. But there are a lot of other reasons that go into it, which we'll talk about further on down. The next thing is that most larger companies use what's called an applicant tracking system. So some of you, is anybody familiar with the applicant tracking system? I know sometimes people know what I'm talking about, sometimes I don't. This will not be an in-depth tutorial on what that is, but I would definitely encourage you to do some independent research on what that is, especially for all of you in tech. It is a software platform. I'll give you kind of a high level description of what it is. So basically, an applicant tracking system is a software program that companies pay for and utilize to process job applications. And so how most of them work is when you upload a job, let's say, for example, a company is looking for a digital marketer. And the job description will kind of list the roles and responsibilities as well as the description of the position. And what that applicant tracking system does is it scans that job description for keywords. And so a lot of keywords that may come up for a digital marketing position might be social media management, measuring insights, email marketing, platforms like MailChimp or HubSpot or Salesforce or anything like that that may be required to perform well in a digital marketing role, those software programs are going to scan for those words that come up more frequently. So you can even do this on your own. As you're going through job descriptions, if you see that the word machine learning pops up in a job description 5 times, you'll want to make sure that your resume has that listed on there about as many times, because what that applicant tracking system also does is it compares your resume to that job description. And so it measures it measures a match based on how well your keywords from your resume fit the job description. It's a horrible system. It's terrible. It's measuring people's ability to perform well in a role based on their ability to include the same keywords from the job description. So I absolutely hate applying for jobs online. Even when this is done effectively and correctly, you still have a chance of having a lower quality score on those applicant tracking systems, because it can be difficult to match certain keywords without compromising the quality of your application materials. And so this is another reason why applying online is ineffective. And from what I'm seeing in the chat, a lot of you weren't even familiar with what applicant tracking systems are. And so a lot of you are applying for jobs without tailoring your resume to fit. And that's probably why you are not even getting first round interviews, why you are getting those generic, thank you, we decided to move on with other candidates. And so this, like I said, this is not going to be an in-depth overview of what applicant tracking systems are. So I would definitely encourage you, look on YouTube. Some of them have very cool like graphics where they show with like little cartoons and different things that explain it a little bit better than I'm going to today, because I want to talk about some other reasons. My goal today is not to teach you how to apply to jobs better online. My goal here today is to teach you some other strategies. But if you are going to continue applying for jobs online, which is fine, I would just encourage you to not make that your main strategy. But if you are going to do it, please make sure that you're doing it correctly. So let's see what people are saying in the chat. So like Glassdoor, let's see, recruiters put your resume into the ATS and magically it will tell if you're good for the position or not. They decide to call you whether or not based on those results. So it's a terrible system. And even the people that use it know it's a horrible system, but let me help you understand why. So as technology has evolved, everything that we do in the business process evolves. So that includes hiring. So with the introduction of online applications, that means you can apply for any job from anywhere at any time with any background, skills, and experiences. And so the recruiters and these employers just simply don't have the capability to review as many resumes as they're receiving. So they've had to implement these applicant tracking systems to somewhat filter out people who have no business even applying for those jobs. And I can attest to that as somebody who has hired in the past. At my previous full-time position, there were people who applied for every single position at the company. And so they were by no means qualified for most of them. And so some of these systems are put into place to kind of find people who are a little bit more qualified. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. That's for another topic for you all to kind of research on your own, or maybe we'll do an additional webinar on that. But I want to make sure that you all are utilizing other strategies than just simply applying online. Okay, so and then the last bullet point here is that employers prefer to hire people with relevant experience and through referrals. So this is probably one of the number one, probably top 2 or 3 issues that I see from Udacity students. They're completing nano degree programs, but they have no direct experience. And that's just a really tough situation to get around. I previously facilitated a webinar on that topic, so it's gaining experience when nobody will hire you. If you check the Udacity's YouTube page, there's an entire playlist of all of our previously recorded webinars. So that one will be on there if you want to look into finding opportunities to gain some experience outside of, just getting a job. If you're hearing that people say, we want you to have more experience, that's a great resource for you to check out if you're looking for a little bit more in-depth insight on how you can start developing some experience there. And then referrals. So as I mentioned in the beginning, referrals are the key to really landing a job, especially in 2020. It is by far the most successful way of landing interviews as well as landing jobs. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So with referrals, the reason why I want to kind of stress this is because people don't realize that relationships make the world go round. It's you can't have a successful business without building relationships. You can't, really perform a successful job search without relationships unless you get lucky. Even with dating, you that's all about relationships. It's all about how you are connecting to people, and so that does not change for the job search process. So here are just a couple of things a couple of statistics that I wanted to share to help drive home the importance of this, right? So one study showed that on average, you have about a 2% chance of landing an interview when applying for jobs online. That's terrible. That is extremely low to land an interview. That's not even to land a job. And so obviously your chances of landing that actual job are much lower. This is not to say that people can't be successful doing this. This is not to say that each and every one of you have a 2% chance. Remember, this is an average. So for most applicants, you have about a 2% chance on average to land an interview when applying. That alone is enough for me to want to like figure out, okay, well, what else? Another statistic: on average, only about 7% of people who are applying for jobs include those applications with employee referrals. So we're talking about the importance of this and how important it is, but only 7% of people are actually doing it. So now where all of this comes together is that referrals account for about 40% of all hires. So people who are hired on average for any given job, about 40% of those people are coming directly as a result of referrals. This is the highest percentage as it relates to landing a job. Obviously 40% is not 100% or 80 or 90. So other things that factor into that include hiring internally. So maybe you already work for a company and they hire you within. Some of that percentage is accounted for through job boards. Some of that percentage is accounted for through career fairs, other hiring events, and different things like that. But as of right now, referrals are the way to go if you want to land a job, and especially if you want to land a good job with a good company. And part of this reason why employers and recruiters are so heavily emphasizing referrals is that on average, people who are referred to a job tend to stay at that job longer. They tend to cost less in the process because of there's not a need to advertise those jobs, and they tend to perform better. And so for me as a job seeker, I also have to put myself in the position of an employer and say, if I'm trying to make a smart business decision, why would I filter through hundreds of online applications when I know that the people who are referred are more likely to be better employees, save us money, and stay in the position longer? So I hope some of this is encouraging you to start thinking about, okay, maybe I should stop spending so much time applying for jobs online and maybe start exploring some of these other strategies. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Okay, so somebody got their first job from a contest and university contests. How to get work experience when nobody will hire us. There's a webinar. I'll try to include that link towards the end if you want to stay tuned. But yeah, I did a whole hour-long webinar about that. But I understand that that's a real pain point. But let's keep it moving. So this is the job search strategy that I want you to start utilizing a little bit more. So if you want to, feel free to either take a screenshot. You can also, maybe just snap a picture on your phone. But this is what I would love for you all to start at least attempting to do. And this is what I call the proactive approach, because this is you doing this in advance so that this cycle continues. So you're not awareness, apply, awareness, apply. There's a lot other steps that you can take in order to start getting some of these referrals. So step one, this is usually the first step that I give people when they have their first coaching call with me, is to have an idea of which companies you want to work for. So a lot of people are just kind of going about it blindly. They're searching for job titles. Let's say they want a data analyst job. They're just searching for data analysts and applying for any of those that fit them. They're not specifically targeting companies. And so it's extremely difficult for them to land referrals based on, just applying for jobs online and not doing anything else. So your first step is to target companies. So as you're going through this process, you need to be realistic about where you fit in the competition as well. I get a lot of people who will say, I was qualified for the job, I interviewed well, and I still didn't get it. That happens. The same way LeBron James doesn't win every single basketball game. It is not always about you not being qualified for the job. Sometimes it's just about the level of competition that you're competing with. And so this is why it's extremely important for you to target these companies first so that you can be more intentional about the strategies that you're implementing with those specific companies. So you need to be able to figure out, one, what types of positions that you're going to be applying for. You shouldn't be taking on 4 or 5 completely different nano degrees and saying I'm open to whatever. You should be, if you're going to do that, you need to have targeted approaches for each one of those jobs that you want. But that first step is for you to figure out which companies do I want to apply for. And then going back to my first point, you have to be realistic about where you stand in the competition. If you have no college degree, no internships, no work experience that's related to the field that you want to go into, if all you have is a nano degree and no direct work experience, you getting a job at Apple or Google or Tesla or these high level tech companies that a lot of people want is going to be, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be especially difficult if you don't have people to refer you as well. So you have to be realistic about where your skill set is. And so if you do have a lot of work experience, if you do have the education to back it up, then I would say that you have a better chance for some of those roles. But if you are just kind of starting off or you're making a career change, keep your mind open to working for smaller companies. Keep your mind open to working for startups. Keep your mind open to doing an internship. Keep your mind open to taking a pay cut if it means that you get to start in an industry that you're more passionate about. So those are just a couple things that I want to go over because I feel like people only want to work for these kind of sexy companies and these really cool companies and these jobs, but you also have to have the experience and the credentials to back that up. Okay, so moving on, once you target those companies, now you can start finding strategic connections. So whether that's through LinkedIn is a great tool for you to start doing this. So let's say, for example, you want to work for XYZ company. What you can do on LinkedIn is search that company and then filter by their employees and then find people who are working at that company who are doing the types of work that you want to do. Where I see a lot of people fail here is they will only reach out to recruiters or they'll only reach out to like CEOs or directors or management level people, and those people aren't actually doing the work that you want to do. So I would highly recommend that you're reaching out to the people who have the positions that you want, because one, they're going to be able to provide you with better insight into what it's like working there, but they also may have a direct impact on the hiring decision or could advocate for you as you start going for these jobs. So LinkedIn is a great tool, but also if you are out at networking events or you're attending meetups, this can be great because if you find somebody who works for that company, feel free to share that. Hey, that's on the list of my top kind of 6 companies that I really want to work for. I'd love to take you out to coffee or buy you lunch or just schedule some time for us to just chat one-on-one. So it's important for you to have a plan, because if you don't, you're just kind of wandering aimlessly and you don't have any type of strategy for how you're going to put yourself in a position for that. So going back to this networking idea, you're going to want to have some face-to-face interaction. For those people who solely want to do their networking online, that's fine and that works sometimes, but there's a certain power that comes with having that face-to-face interaction, being able to showcase to somebody that not only are you great with data science, you can actually have a genuine conversation with somebody who you might be working with. So that's really important for you to make sure that you're attending events, that you're getting out there and you're connecting with people. So Another resource is Meetup. That's a great resource. I know a lot of people who have had a lot of success with that. So it's meetup.com, or you can use the app Meetup. I know for the most part, this is mainly US based. So I don't know if they have a lot of international presence. If they do, great. If not, once again, do some of your own independent research for your specific geographic location. If there are any types of groups, maybe even Facebook groups that meet face to face in person, to where you can start connecting with people in your industry, and you can start, you know, building these relationships with like-minded people who are also doing the same work that you want to do, or can potentially help you land your next role. So let's see some of these questions. How does foreign versus local experience work? So that's going to be different with every company that you apply for. So there are going to be some companies who are kind of like, I'm staying away from any type of international hires because we don't have the capability to do so. There may be people who do that because they can't. There may be people who do that because they don't want to. There may be people who are actually looking for people with international experience, and there may be people who are kind of like, you know, if it fits, it fits. And so that's why I talk about this job search process is more of an art than a science, because ultimately people are making these decisions. It's not an algorithm. It's not a formula. They're not putting in a bunch of numbers and saying the person with the top score wins. It's being decided by people. So it's hard to give really any definitive answers for certain questions like that. Once again, if you have questions, please try to keep them on topic. If you have any questions towards the end, please save those that may be a little bit less relevant to what we're talking about today. But meetups are great for that. One, because oftentimes you're all coming together on a specific subject. So there's a group that I'm involved in here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Technologists of Color. And so it's a technology group. So I know that I'm not going to go to an event and speak to people who are, you know, necessarily in human resources or sales or anything like that. These people are going to be in tech, so we already have that in common. The other great thing about it is that these meetups oftentimes meet on a consistent basis. So that makes it easier for that relationship building, because you're seeing the same people on a consistent basis. You don't necessarily have to worry too much about doing your own individual follow-up. So moving on is personal branding. This is my jam right here. This is what I enjoy helping people do more than anything, because it leads to so many different opportunities when you're able to do it well. But this is a lot about things like posting on LinkedIn, things about conducting workshops, showing up to these events. People know who you are. People know what you do. Writing articles, getting featured in blogs, these types of things. This personal branding piece is so powerful, and I promise you it's not as difficult as you might think. I think I started with it about 2 years ago. I really started pushing this. So I started putting out a lot more content on LinkedIn. I started connecting with people in person. I started doing public speaking. I started doing webinars with Udacity as well as outside, but really just speaking on my subject matter expertise, which is job searching and career coaching. So for you, this may involve anything that you're learning that you want to go into. So if you want to work in AI, start posting about that on LinkedIn. Start reading articles and providing your own feedback. Create your own posts. What's worked really well for me is taking a how-to approach. That is kind of like what I've found to work for me. So sometimes it's a little bit about figuring out what works for you. I spoke to one Udacity student, and we had a great conversation. He was, I believe he was studying front-end development, and he was living in Silicon Valley, but he was driving Uber. And so he was talking about having all of these conversations with people who were working at these tech companies who he was picking up and driving around. And so one of the strategies that we came up with for him was to actually document some of these quote unquote interviews and share this information out for other people who were looking for jobs in tech. And so there are so many different creative ways that you can go about personal branding to where you're helping yourself, but you're also helping other people, because for him, he's helping any job seeker in the Silicon Valley area land these jobs by talking directly to people who are already doing it. So that was just one kind of really cool example. But then I also have people who are working on writing articles on their subject matter area, so that they have a better understanding of how they can showcase to people, that they know what they're doing, that they know what they're talking about. Somebody says, how much time do you spend on personal branding weekly? It depends week to week. I think for me, I spend more time on that than any of these other areas, just because I've gotten a solid handle on it. At this point, I'm getting paid to do it now, so it's almost like doing my own PR. Even with this webinar, even though I'm doing this on behalf of Udacity, some people will watch this. They may connect with me on LinkedIn and say, oh, Brett, he works for Udacity. He's an expert in job search coaching. So it really depends on the week. It depends on what I'm doing. But I spend a lot of time writing. I spend a lot of time creating content, and I spend a lot of time doing public speaking and workshops. So for me, it's a very big area that I focus on because it's led to so many different opportunities for me. How important is consistency when it comes to creating content and put on LinkedIn? Consistency is key. Consistency is key with everything, but especially creating content on LinkedIn, because if you're doing well, if your posts are getting engagement, you want to keep that momentum going. If you have an article that does really well, follow that up with a couple of brief posts that maybe pull snippets from that article. Or if you did get a chance to attend an event, take pictures, provide a recap, brag on the speaker. That's something that I do all the time. If I'm trying to think of like content to post, I'll go to an event, take a picture and say, this was an amazing event, tag that person, list all the different things that I've learned. It helps them to boost their visibility. It helps me to boost my visibility, and it helps my followers to learn something that they weren't able to attend. So as it relates to this personal branding piece and utilizing LinkedIn, try to find ways where everybody wins. That's where I see people have the most success on LinkedIn, is where they're helping somebody, helping themselves, and then helping the general public who are getting to see that interaction. So that's kind of my piece on personal branding. There are also 2 different webinars that I facilitated with Udacity on LinkedIn specifically. So within that career webinars playlist, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, I can't drop it in the chat just yet. I will towards the end, but if you want to kind of find it on your own, just go to YouTube, search Udacity, go to their channel, and then there'll be a playlist for career webinars. So if you're enjoying this presentation, feel free to look through all of those different topics and see if anything stands out and appeals to you. But there are 2 specific webinars that focus on LinkedIn that I facilitated that will really help you with this personal branding piece. If you're also active or looking for more information on this in Student Hub, each coach posts weekly tips every week. And so this week is actually my week. I'm going to post another tip after this, but my week of tips is focused around being recognized as a subject matter expert. So a lot of it will be also talking about kind of this personal branding piece that we're talking about. Okay, and then kind of this last step is the awareness of the job opening and applying for it. So once you're kind of going through this process, then you find a job opening. At that point, it's so much easier to say, hey, Brett, I saw that you have an opening for a digital marketing position. I'm wondering if you could put in a referral for me, or I'm wondering if you could forward my application materials to the hiring manager. What most people do is, honestly, they're lazy. They're lazy and they're using people. And so that's why they don't have success when they're doing this process wrong. They don't focus on this right here. They don't focus on the building relationships piece, and that's where they fail. Some people will find a job first and then try to reach out. And at that point, it becomes very transactional. It's, hey, I saw this job. I want your help to get it. For me, on the receiving end, that's not appealing to me. That's not appealing to me to necessarily want to help you, because it seems like all you're doing is using me to get a job. And a lot of people will have that same mentality and that same mindset. And so that's why you want to be as proactive as possible with this process. And so even if you are in a point where you need a job now, this process is still going to find you a good job faster than just applying to any job here and there. If it's smaller companies, you'll definitely have more success. So once again, I don't want to discourage you completely from applying for jobs online, because some of those smaller companies are still using this process. But if we're talking like the good jobs, the good companies, the higher paying roles, those are going to be highly competitive. And so that's where this stuff comes in to be very important. One other thing is, you may even get reached out to by that person. So if you have a good relationship with that person, hopefully you've clearly communicated how they can help you and what you're looking for in terms of jobs. This has happened to me. There was a position that I wanted a couple years ago. First thing, I targeted that company. I knew I wanted to work for this company. So I started looking for strategic connections. So I went on LinkedIn and we're looking through employees that were doing the role that I wanted. It was a campus recruiter position. And so I found 3 different people who were campus recruiters at that company. And I found one person who had a similar background as me. So my background is in higher education, and I saw that he had a very similar background. So then I reached out to him, that networking piece, and I said, hey, I noticed that you are working here in this role. I'm really interested in potentially doing this someday. I see that you have a similar background, and I'm really interested to know how you made that transition from this to this. I'd love to schedule some time to chat with you, meet over coffee, if you have the time or if you're interested. And so what happened was, we met, we had a conversation. I continued to stay in communication with him, just quick check-ins like, hey, thank you so much for meeting with me. I really appreciate it. It helped me to figure out this, this, and this. And then that personal branding piece came in. And so I started putting out a lot more content around recruiting and recruiting college students and helping college students find jobs. And so that person started to see my face and my name attached to my subject matter expertise a lot more often. And so when his coworker got a new job, he reached out to me immediately before the position was even posted. Remember, going back to the beginning, 70 to 85% of jobs are not even posted online. And so he reached out to me and asked me to send him my application material. So I didn't even have to apply for that job online. My role here with Udacity as a career coach, I never had to apply for this job online. Most of that started here within the personal branding area, but because I was posting about career coaching and job search assistance, a recruiter from there saw the work that I was doing. They saw that I had similar experience, and they asked me to if I wanted to interview for the position, and that's how I got this role. So just a couple of stories to showcase to you, like, this is not just me sharing something that I think. This is what actually works, because it's centrally focused around relationships and building relationships and getting out there and meeting people and trying to connect. I know we live in as connected as we are as a global society, we still oftentimes just kind of hide behind our phones or hide behind our computers, but really getting out in person is where you start to develop some of those solid relationships that can lead to not only jobs, but opportunities for, freelance work, opportunities for paid writing gigs, opportunities for public speaking. You never really know what can happen. There have been times where people have brought me in to do like very quick consulting work. I'm currently writing for a blog right now. I've written for another blog, and I do workshops all the time. And all of this is coming from a lot of that personal branding stuff and putting out content around my subject matter area. Okay, so once again, drill this into your brain. Try to focus on this. These 2 down here are kind of the biggest areas for you to get referrals. So that's what you want to focus on. But really, this whole area is going to be important. So let's move on. I did not expect that to take too long. But I'm curious to know, what companies are you targeting, if any? So if you are, let us know in the chat. If you're not, you should be. Something to think about moving forward. Not a problem if you haven't, but it will help you moving forward. So I'm curious to know what types of companies you all are looking for. While you start typing that in, give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure I plug up my laptop so we're good here. Okay, let's see. Small tech companies. Okay, that's good. That's good that you know. Google, Amazon, Adobe, Microsoft. Okay, those are up there. You better be very prepared. Let's see. Top Toe, Upwork, the future, Facebook, Amazon. Okay. Product-based companies, tech companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. So this chat is extremely helpful right now because it's helping me to understand this. But for you all to think in this chat alone, right? There are 62 people on this webinar right now. There are probably 5 different people who have listed Microsoft. Imagine that on a global scale. The competition is crazy. It's insane, the level of competition for these companies that everybody wants to work for, which makes those referrals and that networking so much more important. So for those of you who are going for those jobs, I wholeheartedly support you in going for that. I will, however, encourage you to open your mindset a little bit to potential other opportunities outside of those enormous companies. Once again, that competition is going to be very high. So don't put all of your eggs in that basket, right? Don't focus all of your effort and energy on those huge companies because you may be missing out on opportunities from smaller tech companies or startups, especially if you don't have honestly, if you want to work for those companies, you have to have top-notch experience and you have to be able to go in and kill those technical interviews. If you feel confident doing that, I say absolutely go for it. But if you're looking for a job and looking to land a job, I would say don't solely focus on those major companies because you could just be missing out on other opportunities, as well as the level of competition that you have to compete with is pretty overwhelming. A couple of people talked about working remotely. Those positions are also highly competitive, obviously, because of the flexibility that they offer. It can sometimes be a little bit difficult to kind of go through that process as well because it's hard to connect in person with remote companies. And so LinkedIn can be very helpful there, and that online communication piece is going to be key. So great. That's great if you all have ideas of where you want to work. Let me see. I think I missed a question. Um, Oh, how do you narrow down to a specific role to pursue? Is there a good resource to help narrow your scope? So I wouldn't say that there's any type of specific resource. One activity that I've encouraged people to do is to kind of make like a T-chart of the different positions that you've had and list all of the things that you enjoyed and all of the things that you didn't, and just compare those all and see if there are things in common. So if you realize I liked this job because it allowed me to work flexibly, I like this job because I got to work with other people. I like this job because they really supported professional development and sending people to conferences. The one thing I didn't like is that there was a little bit of lack of work-life balance, this, that, and the other. Once you start looking at the commonalities between the jobs and experiences that you've had in the things that you like and the things that you dislike, start trying to find roles that fit more of the things that you do like and the things that are going to be more impactful to creating the lifestyle that you want to live. As you speak to different coaches, as you hear from different coaches, a lot of us, we share similar strategies in terms of this process, but as it relates to career coaching, some of us have different mindsets going into it. For me, I used to be really big on, get up and do what you love and enjoy that. And I think that I still kind of pull on that. But for me, it's more so now about utilizing your career to create the lifestyle that you want to live. So if you're okay with not having that much money, but you just want to work a little bit less, there are opportunities for that. If you are really just focused on, maybe you want to buy a house and you're okay with working wherever because it means that you're going to get the financial means to be able to buy that house. I'm big on creating opportunities for yourself based on the goals that you have, not necessarily letting your career dictate how you're able to live your life. And so that's really my mindset around it, and that's how I go about it right now. The reason why I was so interested in this job specifically was because it was part-time. I got to create my hours, and it allowed me to build my business while I really wanted to do that. And so keep those things in mind as well as it relates to trying to narrow down your scope for the roles that you're looking for. Anything specific when it comes to applying to remote jobs? There is a webinar that I did recently on that one. I need to make sure that that one gets uploaded, but that's a whole other topic that's too long for me to try to answer right now. Okay, let me get back to the presentation and I'll try to get back to some of those questions that we weren't able to get to. So let's talk about networking and relationship building, right? So we talked about this a little bit, but let's continue to brainstorm around this topic. So in person, as I mentioned, is extremely important, extremely beneficial. Meetup is great for that. Another resource is Eventbrite. Once again, this is more US based from my experience. So there may be other websites that are similar in your geographic location, but Eventbrite, most people use for event registration, but you can also use that platform for browsing for events and searching for events. So if you know anything like that in your area, you can search for tech, you can search for business, you can search for data science, you can search for marketing, digital marketing, AI, all those things, and try to find events. One thing that people don't realize is it doesn't have to be called a networking event for you to do effective networking there. I would say probably the more successful events where I've done networking is at like workshops. So other people who are also trying to learn a specific subject, I think that's a great way to kind of connect because you share a common experience together. So don't necessarily look just for networking events, panels, launch parties, anything like that that might have people there who are involved in a similar industry. And then online, you're going to keep hearing me. Anytime I do a webinar, I'm probably going to push LinkedIn. And so it's so extremely important. If you're not involving this in your job search strategy right now, you're missing out. If you want to schedule a coaching call to talk about that, feel free to set that up with me. I highly encourage you to take a look at those 2 LinkedIn webinars before scheduling a coaching call about LinkedIn, because I'll just be providing you with a lot of information that's on that. So if you're able to watch those 2 before scheduling a call, we can really hit the ground running and do some individualized planning and strategy for that. Online communities, Facebook groups, GroupMe, Slack channels, email listservs. There are a lot of different ways that you can connect with people online. But then you see that little star note at the bottom. Take these conversations offline if you can. If you're local or you're maybe visiting an area where you have online connections, try to meet in person. I can't stress how important that is, because at the end of the day, it does not matter how capable you are of doing a job. You still have to work with people. And on the hiring end, I have to like you as a person to want to work with you. For the most part, I would rather hire somebody I liked with a little bit less skills than somebody who I don't like, or somebody who can't even have a 30-minute coffee chat, who's just a little bit more highly skilled, because things like that are a lot more easily trained than it is to, genuinely want to work with somebody. So always, always, always should be a goal to take the connections that you're building online into face-to-face interactions. Okay, great. Thank you so much for posting those links in there. So if you look in the chat, those 2 LinkedIn webinars that I was talking about, Asina, thank you so much for posting those in there. If anybody's interested, you can feel free to open those, bookmark them, whatever. But those are going to be really helpful for you in terms of the first one is about optimizing your profile. That's step 1. Most people stop there. The second one is about engagement and content creation, and that's where a lot of that personal branding and that relationship building comes into place. So I see a couple more questions in there, but I want to make sure that we get through the presentation. So the next thing, brought this back up again, just in case anybody didn't get a chance to screenshot or take a snap of that. Obviously, this is going to be re-recorded, so if you want to watch the replay, it'll be there as well. Okay, I see somebody might have wrote on the screen. Let me clear that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so back to this personal branding piece. So I want you all to start thinking about yourself as a business, whether you freelance, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. Job searching is marketing and employers are your customers. So as you go through this process, you have to imagine that you are a product or you are a service that people need. And so you have to do your market research. You have to have these one-on-ones with people that work at this company. Find out what their needs are, find out what problems they're currently experiencing, so that when you do write a cover letter, or when you do have that project to complete, or when you do have your technical interview, or when you have your official interview, you can propose solutions to these things. If you think about it, every single job opportunity ever is either a problem that needs to be solved or a goal that they want to accomplish. And so if you can showcase to them in before you're even hired how you can solve their problems, how do you compete with that? It's hard to. So make sure that you're doing your research. And this is where, you know, having that target company comes into place and is very important, because you can't research every single company. It's better that you do this with the companies that you actually want to work for. Next thing is results driven branding. And so if, you know, going back to my example, the jobs I was trying to get were campus recruiting positions. So I was sharing more content around recruiting top talent, recruiting young talent, helping college students find jobs. And so my branding was in alignment with that. My LinkedIn page was targeting campus recruiting positions. It was in my headline. It was in my about section. It was showcased in my content. I was engaging with other recruiters. And so all of that was in alignment. Keyword optimization. So if you all are familiar with how Google searches work, right? A lot of those searches are based on the amount of keywords that come up when you search those things. So it's the same thing as it relates to these applicant tracking systems that I'm talking about, as well as LinkedIn. If your profile does not include keywords from the positions that you're looking for, you're missing out. That's where that first LinkedIn webinar is going to come in really helpful, because I'll showcase you that step by step how you can do a better job with that. And then the networking piece. So the relationship building, same thing as a business. You have to network to get customers. You have to network to build partnerships. And you have to keep track of these relationships. If you just find them and meet them and have one sale, that's fine, but your best customers are often your return customers. So same thing goes with you in your job search. Make sure that you're following up and keeping in contact with the connections that you are making. Okay, let's skip this so that we can get through it. But accessing the hidden job market. So this is a couple of tools that you can use, a couple of resources. Google Alerts are great. If there are a couple of companies that you specifically want to work for, feel free to set up Google Alerts for those, so that when they're mentioned in the news, you have a better idea of that. A couple of cool things that I've been able to use Google Alerts for is typing in like certain companies in Atlanta. So if certain companies move their headquarters here, I know that they're about to hire. So instead of waiting for them to post those jobs online, I'm connecting with those recruiters in advance and saying, hey, I saw in this article that you all are moving to Atlanta. If you're looking for anybody who does this, I'd love to share my resume if you're interested. This is easy, but it's next level thinking. It's putting yourself in a position to be successful before everybody else even has a chance to. Making sure that you're following these companies on LinkedIn as well as their employees. A lot of times employees will post jobs before they're even posted online. You'll see that quite frequently, and a lot of times they'll even include an email so you can submit your stuff directly to that person, which means you don't have to worry about an applicant tracking system. A lot of companies will allow you to sign up for their hiring newsletter. So they'll send you updates anytime they're hiring for new roles. Conferences and job fairs are always helpful. I got my very first full-time job at a conference. So obviously it works. And then networking is huge. So we have about 4 minutes left. I want to answer as many questions as I possibly can. Let's see how many we can get through. Give me 1 second. Okay. So how to reach key people successfully. They reply to you. So one, try to personalize it as much as possible. You can even filter on LinkedIn for people who completed nano degrees at Udacity. So obviously they have to put that on their profile first, but you can filter their school by Udacity. That's an easy way to find something in common. You may have went to the same university. You may have the same philanthropic causes. You may volunteer with the same organization. Read their about section, see if you have anything in common there. Those are great ways to do it. I tell people all the time, offer to buy them lunch, offer to buy them coffee. And some people will say, I don't have the money, I can't afford that. If you don't start prioritizing investing in yourself, you'll always have that mindset. So I may not necessarily have $30 to spend on lunch, but if that $30 leads to a job that pays me $10,000, $20,000 more, it's worth it. Even if it doesn't happen this go around, I may be able to pull on that connection in the future. So you have to get in the habit of investing in yourself. Obviously, you all paid for these nano degree programs and are attending this workshop. So I know that that is something that you do. So don't forget to do those things just as a way to sweeten the pot for them. Does LinkedIn recommendations help? Absolutely. So I want you all to think about this for a second. If you're going to buy something on Amazon and let's say you want a new shower curtain, you're going to go there. What's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to go and check the reviews because we want to know if other people also vouch for this product. We don't want to just believe the seller because they're trying to make money. And so your LinkedIn recommendations are oftentimes at the bottom of your profile. And these are people who are vouching for your work. And so for a recruiter or for an employer, let's say you posted something on LinkedIn about I don't know, computer vision. You posted something about your thoughts on this one specific topic. And somebody's like, oh, we need somebody to do that. Let me go to their profile. Then they go to your profile and you followed all the tips and tricks I showed you in that LinkedIn webinar. And then they see at the very bottom that there are 12 people vouching for your work. At that point, they're going to be more likely to reach out to you to where you're starting to get offers for interviews without ever even having to apply. So you're on the completely other end of this hiring process. You have a lot of power to leverage. That means you can negotiate salary better. You can do all of these different things better than being on the desperate end of needing a job and feeling like you have to rely on other people for help. So LinkedIn recommendations are great. How to balance being humble or boasting about your skills? I mean, that's a tough question. That's going to depend on the person that you're talking to. Some people want you to brag, especially in the hiring process. They want to know why you're good enough for that position, but that's really case by case basis. Sharing the slide, we don't really share the slides, but we will upload the recording. So be on the lookout for that. It may be within the next couple of days. I'll probably post that in Student Hub this week to let you know that the recording is finally up. I don't know what you're asking. What about consultancies? Can you clarify that question? I will publish the presentation. It will be recorded on that webinar playlist. Is it okay to call the companies to get information about available positions? I think, there's no harm in trying. Nobody's going to be like, oh, this guy or this girl called me and they wanted to know. Like, that's not going to ever work against you. I just don't know that a lot of companies are going to be willing to share that information. What you're probably going to experience is you're going to call and ask, and they're going to forward you to their website to check there. So I think it's fine to try, but I don't know that you're going to experience too much success with that. Okay, sorry that I had to run through that as quickly as possible, but I hope this was helpful. I would love to see some of you sign up for coaching sessions, either with me or any of the other career coaches around these topics. But as we go into this new year, stop relying on those old habits. If all you're doing is applying for jobs online, it's kind of lazy. Go the extra mile. Focus on quality over quantity. Only apply for jobs that you really, really want and put in the work to build those relationships and get to that point. Don't just type in the job title you want and apply to everything and hope for the best. That's how you end up back in the same position with a job that you hate. And so you don't want to kind of rush into a job. That's why it's important for you to focus and find those jobs that you really want. And even some of those ones that are a little bit of safer bets, but maybe ones that were going to help you get to your next level. Yeah, thank you all. I really appreciate you all showing up. This is the highest attended webinar that I've done with Udacity since April. So I appreciate you all being engaged. I appreciate you all committing to this. I see that there are a couple of other questions that I'm not going to be able to get to. As I mentioned, feel free to schedule a follow-up call. If you want to, go ahead and jump into Student Hub really quickly. I'll be there to answer questions. Please keep those questions to like easy, quick questions. If they're more in-depth, schedule a coaching call so that we have a full 30 minutes over the phone individually to talk through that. But thank you all so much. I am going to work to get this uploaded once it's processed and uploaded to YouTube. So if you want to kind of rewatch it, feel free to do so. If you want to schedule a coaching call, as I mentioned, you can schedule with me. Any of the other coaches will be able to help you with this. But once again, thank you so much, and be on the lookout for our future events that we have coming up. So thank you all. I'll look forward to seeing you all soon.